Tony, great to have you on the Slice of Real Estate podcast. How are you today?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me, Jared.
Super excited to chat. Let's dive right in. First off, I would love if you could just explain what Atlas Real Estate is for anyone in our audience that maybe hasn't heard of you before.
Yeah, you bet. So Atlas is a fully vertically integrated property management company, and we serve institutional individual investors across 10 states today. We're also the sponsor on multiple joint ventures in residential real estate, and we're really focused on creating an environment that attracts the most talented team members we can and inviting them into a culture of really hard work and human flourishing. Hopefully that leads to more alignment with everybody we serve, and we get better results over time.
I love it. You know, Atlas focuses on using real estate to build long-term wealth. So would love if you could explain, maybe how does your approach differ from the traditional real estate investment strategies?
Yeah, you bet. So when Atlas was founded, we were a fix and flip company. So we bought hundreds of fix and flips in the first year we existed. Some of those were just wholesale back out to other flippers. A lot of them we did ourselves. And we found a couple of things to be true. Number one, when you're doing fix and flips, your number one business partner is the federal government. And because they take a short-term capital gain, and they're a terrible partner because when you lose money on a deal, they don't pitch in. That was the first thing. The second thing was every time you sold a property, you were starting over and you weren't really accumulating anything over time. So at that time, we switched our approach and our strategy to say we want to be long-term hold investors. We want to think about a 20-year horizon. We want to own these assets. We want to put fixed rate debt on them everywhere that we can, and we want to own them for the foreseeable future. And that's played out really well for us. And I think if you go around and ask anybody who's in their, late 40s or 50s today, if they wish they owned more real estate or less real estate through their lifetime, they're pretty much all going to say they wish they owned more real estate.
I really like how you explained how the federal government is as a partner, because it's kind of funny and also, maybe a little sad. Yeah. So now you're not having that short-term capital gains, right, on the properties that you have because you're a long-term holder. So I guess this kind of ties into it, but I was going to ask, how has your experience as property owners kind of help shape the company today?
Yeah, that's a great question. We started saying early on, we didn't start out as a property management company. We formed a property management company because we couldn't find property managers in the markets where we were buying assets who we felt like were really aligned with our interests. And you think about how easy it is to get misaligned. So, one of the larger fees that a property manager earns is a leasing fee, right? Well, to get a leasing fee, you have to vacate a property. And what's the largest expense that a property owner faces? It's vacancy. So there's a misalignment that just happens naturally there. And we just said, what do we do about this? So we launched our own property management company. And kind of our tagline from the beginning has been, we want to be owners helping owners. So one of the key metrics we measure in our company is the average number of doors that our team members own. And that number drives a lot of what we do. And that number has moved up over the last couple of years as our team members continue to buy into this idea that they should house hack, number one, if they're buying their first home, right? Figure out a way to not buy your dream home, but buy your first rental property. And then from there, continue to accumulate real estate over time. So I think that's done a lot to shape how we manage. We think about alignment everywhere. We beat the drum on renewing residents as much as we can. And we're really focused on the costs to maintain property over time.
Now, Tony, you're in 10 markets today, right? 10 states. Can you talk to me about why you decided to scale into these 10 states? And we don't have to list all of them. Like anyone goes to your website, they'll see all 10. But
Yep.
If there's any you want to single out maybe in particular, please do. But what is it about these 10 markets that made you want to scale in them?
Yeah, great question. So part of the reason that we wanted to expand the company really is missional for us. So our mission is to uplift humanity through real estate. The more doors we manage, the more people that we have on our team and employ, the broader impact that we think we can have just on all the people that we serve. So that's really the motivator for us in our growth. Market selection is a whole nother thing, right? So we're in markets like Colorado that traditionally have seen great appreciation. And we're in markets like Kansas City that the appreciation maybe is not quite as strong, but the cash flow is pretty good. And so when we're evaluating a market, we're looking at a number of different factors that play into our investment thesis. Number one, do we believe 20 years from now that market's still going to be a strong market and potentially it's going to outperform kind of the national average, if you will? So there's this 20-year view of kind of reality. The second one is this path of development idea. So we're looking even within a market at the submarket and saying, okay, what's happening here? Where are the artists living today? What's happening in these submarkets? What's maybe a geographical constraint? If you look at Denver, for instance, on the west side of the city, there's the Rocky Mountains. So you're pretty geographically constrained. If you go to Arizona, you've got some constraints around water. So where do we see geographic constraints that we think during that 20-year hold time might actually drive values up because of a little bit of scarcity? And then finally, where can we professionally manage it? And we really believe in property management and professional management as a way to maximize returns over time.
So, Tony, if we look at what advice you'd give to first-time real estate investors in today's market, what would you tell them?
A few things. Number one, there's an old proverb, right? It says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So there's a lot of people that are holding off on buying real estate today because maybe prices are going to drop, or maybe rates are going to fall, or there's a lot of reasons to delay that. We would look at that and say the number one most important thing if you're going to purchase an investment asset today is, does it cash flow? And can you stress test that just a little bit, just enough to where if we do hit some speed bumps in the economy or in the rental or leasing market, that you're going to be able to weather a little bit of a storm. So do you have meaningful reserves, and does the property cash flow? And if it does, then it's probably a great time to start buying real estate. The other thing is just be wise about where you're buying. Be thoughtful about the submarket in which you're buying. Be thoughtful about what the demographics of that community are. We look a lot at things like in-migration and diversity of the employment pool, and these kind of buffers against economic challenges. We think a lot about that when we do market selection. And then finally, get someone to help you walk through what your goals are. So do you want to park cash somewhere that it's going to accumulate? Do you want to create monthly cash flow? What is it that you're trying to do? And depending on where you are in your investing life cycle, that's going to look a little bit different. So we work with individual investors who say, hey, I'd like to own something that's going to appreciate more quickly. Then we're going to look at different locations. They might want cash flow. They might want other things that are important to them, and we're able to place them in assets that make sense based on those needs.
And those type of investors, they have like a return range in mind, and what period of time does that usually look like for that return?
Yeah, in our experience, first-time investors, typically we're helping them understand what an IRR is and what a cash on cash return is, and helping them kind of walk through why those things matter. We also serve institutional investors, right? So it depends on where their capital came from. If they're looking for opportunistic or core plus returns, then we can find assets to meet those needs. One of the biggest things we see though, Jared, is people who have owned real estate for a period of time, and they really haven't done the analysis on how it's performing today. They did the analysis 5 or 10 years ago, and it looked like a good cap rate, and that cap rate was higher than the cost of their debt, right? And they had a little bit of a spread there, and they went, oh, it's a great deal. And now we look at some of those properties and go, well, that home's appreciated far faster than the rent has grown on it. So we see a number of investors who are sitting in, what they thought was a 6, 7 cap, and it's effectively a 2 or 3 cap today. And it would make a lot of sense for them to recycle that capital, use 1031 as a tool, which is a fantastic tool that the IRS provides for you to move that into something that's going to yield better over time.
So you mentioned earlier how important it is to run the numbers, right? This is something I hear from certain people, right? Where they'll say like, oh no, you can find these good deals everywhere. I mean, I'm sure you can find some good deals in some locations, but like, I have a lot of family up in the Northeast, and I do those back of napkin numbers, right? Or I talk with people up there, and there are some areas, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because of the rate increase and how much more expensive it maybe is for a property there, the numbers do not add up to maybe have that as a rental property. Do you see that as well, or is it,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I also think not only is it just as simple as the price of the property and the interest rate of the loan, your capital stack matters and how you play with that. But we were buying distressed assets in Detroit during the global financial crisis. And you looked at it and they were 12 caps, 13 caps, 15 caps on paper. What you didn't realize was that there were other factors. So if someone goes and steals your power meter every week off of your house, that 12 cap quickly erodes, right? So you got to look at that factor. Another factor is if you look at a lot of times we see these models that come out of kind of Rust Belt communities and they are really high cap rates, but they're really low rents, right? So you're looking at rents of, let's just pick on $1,000 a month. We say, all right, I'm getting $1,000 a month out of this single family home. Well, a water heater still costs what a water heater costs. I'll pick on Bucksnort, Ohio, because it's a fake place that I made up years ago. A water heater costs what a water heater costs. And how much of your net income for the year are you giving up on basic maintenance? So there's a number of things to consider that are really important when you look at actual returns.
What's something maybe kind of crazy, wild that's happened at one of your properties?
Oh gosh. If you can imagine it, it has happened at one of our properties. We've had all of it from, sad stories around production labs and things like that. We did own a building in Denver at one point that literally fell down. It was not a residential rental property. It was a property we bought to renovate and turn into residential units. And at one point, 3 of the 4 walls fell in and no one was injured. And that's great. And, gosh, I mean, the things that come across our desk, anytime you're dealing with real estate on scale, it's pretty crazy.
If you were going to go into another state in the near future, which I'm sure you're always looking at this stuff, right? What does a state really need to have for you to start taking more of an interest and start running more of the numbers?
Yeah, I think the first thing we look at is migration patterns and what's happening with the demand for housing in a given market. And then the next thing is what does the housing supply and the pipeline look like? So there are a number of markets where in-migration has slowed and supply really has come online like last year, this year, through next year. And we think those markets are going to face some headwinds. Likely, they're going to see flat rent growth at best. And that's part of the cycle. That's real. If you own assets there, you got to navigate that. But as we look at entering markets, we're looking at markets where the net in migration looks pretty positive, and we're looking at housing starts and pipeline for apartments to look at, okay, where's there a miss, right? Where's there the opportunity for supply and demand to work in our favor?
Are there any outside of what you're doing at Atlas, and these obviously don't have to be competitors, but are there any companies that you've been kind of really excited to follow along with in the real estate space that you're like a fan of what they're doing?
Oh man, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of a lot of our competitors who are great guys. So I'm a big fan of Evernest Real Estate. They're a great property management company. We overlap in a couple markets, but they're people that I love to learn from and watch what they do, and they act with integrity. And I tend to be a guy who believes that more than one player is going to win in a market, and I want the good players to win. So those are the people that I tend to follow. We're big fans of the technology partners that we work with. Appfolio is a tremendous partner to us. Property Meld, Ray Hesfin's company out of the Dakotas. He's done an amazing job building a platform that's got over 600,000 doors on it and provides tremendous data and process improvement for us. So really grateful for some of those partners and the ways they've made our business better.
I'm with you on the competition piece, by the way. Like, I feel like you're in the wrong industry if multiple competitors can't win.
That's right.
If it's one person, then you probably shouldn't be in that space as it is.
That's
Uh,
right. And we should share ideas and support each other, and we'll let the bad guys go out of business and we want the good guys to win. Right?
I actually see that a lot, by the way, where competitors like there's some collaboration and communication because there's a couple players maybe that all the competitors aren't fond about, and they want to make sure that they're doing things the right way. So that's exciting. You mentioned migration patterns a few times, but are there any other trends that you're constantly kind of watching? Like, let's say these can be regulations to the rest of this year, heading into 2025. Anything top of mind?
Yeah, for sure. We're looking at, I hate to say political climate, but I think that's real in a lot of markets where we operate. where listen, we're fans of helpful legislation and regulation. We think it should be hard to be a slumlord. Can I just put it that way? Like it should be really hard to make life harder for a resident of a property that you own. But there's a balancing act to that. Most of the investors that we serve, they don't own these homes free and clear. They've got their own liabilities and they've got their own responsibilities that they need to fulfill, and they're using these properties to do that. So it should be a meaningful exchange where, listen, you agreed to pay the rent. If you don't pay the rent, you don't get to live in the house, right? There's just some kind of reasonableness that should happen. So we do look at that. We do see some risk in some markets where this kind of idea that the landlord is somehow a bad player catches on. So that's something that we look at. The other thing is obviously employment and where we see the opportunity for employment growth. So if you look at a market like Colorado Springs, for instance, what a great place to live. And there's some really cool things happening in Colorado Springs around employment growth and expansion and some move into the tech industry that's going to happen there. So we look at that, but you've got an offset in Colorado Springs. You've got a lot of military families in Colorado Springs. So those are the kind of things where having really smart people that live and work in those markets keeps us really close to what's happening in those markets.
Well, Tony, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today, sharing some insights with our audience. I know they'll really enjoy hearing from you and look forward to staying in touch. And please let us know of any updates happening or anything that is top of mind.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jared.